Hello everybody, today we're gonna make a grown-on collar, which is this one. If you remember last week we made a shirt collar, which is like a typical shirt, a school uniform collar, which sits on top of the neck of your body. This time, this is a very curved, smooth collar, which actually grows out of your front body, and then it joins the back body, which is why it's called a grown-on collar or a shawl collar, because it looks like you're wearing a shawl. Variations of this would be the sailor collar, the smoking collar, but the official name is grown-on or shawl collar. Okay, it's got a really nice smooth line, and again you can vary it as you want to. If you have a look at your instructions, I have given you as well. You've got a drawing of how it can look at the top. You also got a diagram of your pattern, and you got some instructions. So first thing you need to do is get your front body block. And you draw around it, as always. But this time you need to make sure you leave space at the front and you leave space at the top, because this is where we're going to add the collar. So if you put it right at the corner of a paper, you won't have any space, okay? So don't do this. You want some space around it. Also this time, remember to mark your notches at the side for your bust start, because you're making the whole front up to your waist. So you want enough space at the bottom, and you also want to mark the bust start, so when you put it on the mannequin it's going to look nice. Okay, this is your center front. Okay. So the first instruction is actually to add a button wrap to the center front. As you remember from last time, the button wrap or stand is the area at the front of your garment which is double, like on a shirt or a jacket, and where your buttons go. So this again is up to you as a designer how wide you want it. You're thinking it's more of a jacket or a coat collar. It's not really a shirt collar, so 2 centimeters would be a classic shirt. So you might want to make it a lot wider. You could go double press, which would be 12, 15, or you could make it, for example, I'm going to make it 5, which is quite a nice, generous button stand. When you're drawing it, always remember to use these parallel lines to make sure the button stand is parallel to the center front. Okay. The next thing is actually to draw in the break line at point 1. The break line, as you might guess, is the point where the collar breaks open. So wherever you mark it on your button stand, your collar is going to break. So it might be worth actually looking at a mannequin and looking yourself in the mirror and say, do I want it up here, which is very much like a sailor collar? Do I want it middle, which is like a classic revers? Or do I want it quite low, which would be more of a smoking? It's up to you. So I'm going to do mine roughly with the busters. That's point 0. And you connect that point 0 to point 1, which is your break line. Again, this is where the collar breaks later on. It opens. Okay? So the break point 1 is up at the high shoulder point. The next thing you need to do is connect 1 to 2, which is the length of your half your back measurement. And as you remember, this is half your back measurement. So on your pattern, it is already this. You don't have to halve anything, because you only ever work on half a body. So it is 7.5 centimeters. So you put the 0 the middle of your pattern master at 0.1, and then you mark 7.5, which is 0.2. The next thing is 0.2 to 3, which is 1 centimeter. And it is 1 centimeter towards the shoulder. Okay, this is quite important. If you put it towards the collar, it will be wrong. The reason we're doing this becomes apparent in the next line, is where you join 3 to 1 in a slightly curved line and square. So you start at 1, you use the smooth edge, the curve for your pattern master to get a nice curve, and then you create a square at 0.3. The reason you're curving is, you might remember last week we had to curve our shirt collar at the bottom because your neck on your block is very curved on the body and the shirt was really straight. So what would have happened if you put it together, the shirt collar would have stood off your neck. But because our neck comes in, we will want the collar closer to our neck, and that's the reason we curve it inwards. Okay? That's important, is why you're curving it in, you're curving it towards the original line, you're not curving it away, that would make it worse. The next thing you need to do is to square across from 3 to 4 to give the center back line, which is this line, which is a seam in this case, not like the shirt collar, which was a smooth line. And again, now it's up to you as a designer, as you remember from last week. Depending on how high you make this will change. So if you want a tiny collar, you make it much smaller. Again, it might be worth actually looking at a mannequin, not your friend, and measuring. Or if you want quite a big dramatic collar, you want to make it much bigger, so maybe 20 centimeters. I'm going to make it about 10, which is quite a conventional length, and mark it 4. And then you draw a line from 0.4 to 0.0, which is your main design line. So this is completely up to you. You could make a nice smooth line, but even if you go smooth, are you going to have it like nice coming out across your front? Is it going to be static and nothing, going really big over your shoulder? Is it maybe even having an angle so it becomes a sailor collar? Or is it going to be really tiny to become a smoking collar? So think about it. As you're researching, the designer said to you as homework, you can already start at collars you like and decide which one would actually work for this, which one do I like, which one don't I like. And then think about how would my pattern look if I put that collar in. So I've given you some tiny little blocks so you can start experimenting and working out different colors and folding them. So in this case, I'm going to start quite small. But what, again, is important is that you have a right angle at the center back. Same as last week. If you have an angle, you're going to get a kink in here. So when it's folded, it's actually going to look like this, which isn't that pretty. Unless you want to have like a sort of scalloped collar, then you might actually decide you have a scallop at the center back. That's up to you, but you have to be aware. Every line you draw is not just for the point of it, it actually has a purpose in your final design. And then you can use, again, the curved edge to get a lovely smooth collar. There we go. This is the pattern you can see. The next thing you need to do is add seam allowance everywhere. As you remember, seam allowance is always 1 centimeter and it's always parallel. So on your pattern master, you use the second line where it says 1, and you put that line onto original line. So your edge is now 1 centimeter away, and then you add a new line. And again, on your curved line, you have the same. So you put the 1 centimeter line on your curve, and then the new edge you get is your seam allowance. Okay? You need to add that all the way around. This time we got a seam at the center back, so you need seam allowance there as well. Okay, and then I'm not adding seam allowance at the sleeve because we're not putting a sleeve in, it's just an armhole. But you can, it's up to you, you might want to put some sleeves in later. So this is your front pattern completely done. Now you only need to do your back pattern, and you can either use the one you already did last week because it's exactly the same, or if you want to make it bigger, you can draw again around it and then add seam allowance everywhere but the center back, because again the center back is on fold. Okay? And remember to always put all your notches in, even if you don't use them now. It's just a very good habit to get into. Because as you remember, your notches are really important when you sew later on. Because without the notches, once you only have fabric, you won't have any idea where everything matches. Okay, so always mark them and then slightly snip them in the fabric. Okay, and then we don't need any seam allowance here because it is the fold. And as I didn't add any seam allowance at the front, at the sleeve, I'm not going to add any at the back because otherwise it's not going to match. So whatever you decide to do, you have to do the same as the other. And for the back neck, you can use your inside curve to do a quick seam allowance. Okay, there you have it, front and back. The last thing you can do, and this is like really, I like to do this one first in fabric and make it up, and then if you're finished early, there's a really good extension cast at the bottom of the sheet. You can actually make it the facing, because at the moment we've got a collar made out of single fabric, so it's very floppy. It's not very finished, it's literally just a trial, a tryout to see how you like the design. If you want to make it more into a finished garment, you can add a facing, as you can see at the bottom of your instructions. And what you do is, you draw a line, roughly 5 centimeters from point 1 on your shoulder, and then you create a line going down, running roughly parallel to your center front. And when you cut the pattern along that line, you get your facing. And the last thing you need to do there, you can see, you actually increase the edge by 2 mil. And as you remember, we do that, so the seam isn't at the edge. You do it so the seam goes underneath, it rolls over, it makes it look more expensive. That's the difference between design and high street, it's all these little details. And then you can also add a back neck facing, which follows onto here, follows off this point, so it needs to be the same measurement on the center, on the back shoulder, so 5 centimeters, and then also 5 centimeters at the center back, and then draw a line parallel to the collar. And again, either trace it or cut along that line, and then you get your facing pieces. And then you have a really nice collar. Okay, I look forward to seeing you next week, and I hope